So we've gone through about 4 pages of philosophy text so far with Descartes' Meditations. We won't be marching quite as minutely through the rest of the text as we've done so thus far, but we still will be paying fairly close attention to the text. And one thing about philosophy and philosophers is that we like to be really careful about what we say, precisely, clearly, not be ambiguous. 2 of the biggest questions you can ask when you're doing philosophy are, what do you mean and how do you know? We usually try to get the what do you mean part cleared up first, because there's not much point in asking how do you know that until you're clear about what the that is. So Descartes is very careful in what he says. He's very precise. He chooses his words very carefully, and this is before word processing, so it's that much more of an accomplishment on his part. And we want to respect repay the compliment by trying to be careful in our attention to the text as well. So now we're moving into meditation 2, and by meditation 2 he's going to be trying to climb his way out, or better claw his way out of the skeptical doubts that he's fallen into. So he says, yesterday's meditation has thrown me into such doubts that I can no longer ignore them. Yet I fail to see how they are to be resolved. It's as if I had suddenly fallen into a deep whirlpool. I'm so tossed about that I can neither touch bottom with my foot nor swim to the top. Nevertheless, I will work my way up and will once again attempt the same path I entered upon yesterday. I will accomplish this by putting aside everything that admits of the least doubt, as if I had discovered it to be completely false. I'm going to stay on this course as far as I can, and maybe I'll be able to accomplish something. I've summarized. So let's suppose, he says, that everything I think is not true, or at least subject to serious doubt. I believe that none of what my deceitful memory represents ever existed. I have no senses whatever, at least no senses that tell me about anything in the world. Body, shape, extension, movement, and place are all chimeras. That is all phantoms, not real. What then will be true? Maybe the only thing that's true, he says, will be that nothing is certain. But how do I know that there's not something else over and above all those things that I've just reviewed, concerning which there's not even the least doubt? Maybe, he says, maybe there is some God, or by whatever name I might call him, who instills those very thoughts in me. But he says, maybe I could be the author of those thoughts. So how do I know that they would come from God? He responds, but I've already denied that I have any senses in any body. This is doubting that. Still, I hesitate for what follows from this. Now he's going to be starting to give you a kind of positive answer to these skeptical doubts. Am I so tied to a body and to the senses that I cannot exist without them? That's an important question. Am I so tied as the self that I am, so bound up with the body and the senses, that if I doubt them, I must also doubt my own existence, he says? But wait, I have persuaded myself that there's nothing in the world, at least I'm not willing to believe that, no sky, earth, minds, or bodies. Is it then the case that I too do not even exist? But doubtless I did exist if I persuaded myself of something. So if I persuaded myself of something, I must have existed in order to do this self-persuading. But there is some deceiver or other who's supremely powerful, he's considering an objection again, who's supremely powerful and supremely sly and who's always deliberately deceiving me, he says. Then too, there is no doubt that I exist. If he's deceiving me, and let him do his best at deception, he will never bring it about that I'm nothing so long as I think that I am something. That is to say, Descartes is now telling us that no matter how much I doubt, I can still be sure that there is a self doing that doubting. There's an old Bare Naked Ladies song with a line in it, on an evening such as this, I begin to doubt whether I exist. And that's a reference back to Descartes. So what he's saying is, at the end of that paragraph, he says, after everything has been most carefully weighed, it must finally be established that this pronouncement, I am, I exist, is necessarily true every time I utter it or conceive it in my mind. So this is what he calls later on an Archimedean point, a point upon which he can leverage everything else he wants to do. What he's saying is, no matter how much I doubt, I can be sure that there must be a self that is doing that doubting. I'm thinking, for example, I'm doubting. Therefore, I must exist in order to do that thinking. The Latin is cogito, and then ergo, the Latin word for therefore, sum, I am. I'm thinking, therefore I exist, is Descartes' fundamental inference that begins to, as it were, reconstruct a response to the skeptical doubts. So now he's in a position to say, no, I'm not willing to call everything into doubt. There is one thing about which I think I can be certain, namely that I exist. How do I know? Oh, I know how, because no matter how much I'm deceived, there must be a self to be deceived. So that even if I'm in Zeke's vat, even if I'm being duped by this evil genius, no matter how depressing the skeptical possibility is, there must be a self that is being duped. Now, I might still be wrong about whether I have a pair of hands. I might still be wrong about whether my brain is attached to my body or whether I'm awake, but I cannot be wrong in my belief that I exist if I so much as think the thought.